The Aetherian Council Chamber was a marvel of interstellar architecture, an amphitheater of polished obsidian and holographic displays that stretched up toward a vaulted ceiling. At its center stood an enormous insignia of the Council, a stylized solar symbol representing unity among the star systems. The chamber, located in Aetheria's capital city of Meridian Prime, was a place of history and decision, where some of the galaxy's most pivotal resolutions had been forged. But on this day, an air of tension weighed heavily on every seated delegate and official, as if even the walls sensed the gravity of the impending decision. The hum of quiet voices died down as a tall, stately figure approached the center of the room. High Counselor Sanera Thal stood poised before the assembly, her silver and blue uniform pristine, adorned with the sigil of Aetheria on her chest. Her face bore the subtle, intricate lines of cybernetic enhancements, a mark of her high status and years of service. Her gaze was steely, and the faintest glint of something unreadable passed over her expression as she looked over the room. The council members, all representing different star systems, factions, and worlds, waited in a tense silence, eyes fixed on her. Sanera glanced at the screens behind her, which displayed images of the shipwrecked remains of the SS Calliope, a Terran vessel that had been torn apart on the outskirts of Xerion 4. The incident had left 578 crew members dead, every last soul aboard. A hushed grief lay over the room, mixed with simmering anger. These were Terran lives, innocent men and women caught in the unyielding jaws of a galactic dispute that had been brewing for years. She took a steadying breath and began, her voice clear and authoritative. Counselors of Aetheria, we are here to decide the fate of our relationship with the Xerion Collective. The deaths of 578 crew members of the SS Calliope cannot be ignored. An investigation has confirmed that the attack on our ship was no accident. It was an act of war. There was a murmur among the council members. Some of them looked down, while others exchanged uneasy glances. The Xerion Collective was a powerful faction, infamous for its militant stance and advanced weaponry. A war with them could spell disaster for countless lives across the galaxy, yet allowing such an atrocity to go unpunished was equally unthinkable. A gray-haired counselor, Regent Ralvik of the Terra Sol system, rose to speak. He wore a look of pained resignation. High Counselor, this is indeed a grievous loss. But are we prepared for the consequences of open war with the Collective? We may win battles, but at what cost to our people, our worlds? Sanara's gaze sharpened. Regent Ralvik, the Xerion Collective has repeatedly encroached on Aetherian territory, disrupted our trade routes, and now, they have slaughtered hundreds of our people without cause. If we do not respond with strength, they will see us as weak, ripe for conquest. I believe there are times when the cost of peace is too high, and this is one of those times. More counselors rose, each adding their voices to the debate. The room filled with arguments, cautionary tales, and passionate speeches, each person presenting their perspective. Some argued for diplomacy, for restraint. Others demanded retribution, convinced that only force would keep the Collective in check. But even as the counselors spoke, a dark undercurrent ran through the assembly, fear. For decades, the Xerion Collective had operated on the fringes of known space, a confederation of rogue states and militant worlds united by a belief in their own supremacy. They were ruthless, and rumors persisted of their brutal tactics and sophisticated technology. No one doubted their readiness for war, but the idea of Aetheria, a coalition of peaceful star systems, meeting them in open conflict sent a chill through the room. Finally, after hours of debate, Sanera raised a hand, commanding silence. Her face was drawn, as though the weight of the decision had aged her in mere hours. She looked out over the assembly, her voice taking on a steely edge. The Xerion Collective has shown us time and time again that they do not value peace, nor do they respect our sovereignty. I have heard your pleas for diplomacy, but I believe that diplomacy, in this case, would be surrender by another name. Her gaze swept the room. I ask that this council take a stand, not just for the memory of the 578 lives lost, but for the future of Aetheria. The room was silent, the gravity of her words hanging heavy in the air. The counselors looked at one another, some nodding in grim agreement, others casting worried glances. And then slowly, one by one, they raised their hands in support. With a final, resounding thud of the gavel, the decision was made. In the following days, the preparations for war began. Orders were dispatched to Aetherian fleets scattered across the galaxy, calling them to the staging grounds near the edge of Xerion territory. Massive dreadnoughts, agile fighters, and specialized scout ships converged, forming one of the largest assemblies of military power the galaxy had seen in generations. Shipyards worked around the clock, weapons systems were tested, and soldiers underwent final training regimens, each knowing that their lives could end in the coming battles. High Counselor Thal, who had become the face of the decision for war, spent long hours reviewing tactical plans with her advisors. She barely slept, her mind filled with the faces of the families who had lost loved ones aboard the Calliope, and with the steely determination to ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. She knew the risk, knew the lives she was sending into the unknown, but she also knew that hesitation could spell their doom. Meanwhile, whispers of the impending conflict spread like wildfire across the Aetherian worlds. Civilian populations braced themselves, some organizing rallies in support of the war effort, while others protested, fearing the devastation that might follow. The Council's decision had polarized the Aetherian citizens, and even among the military ranks, doubts simmered. Yet there was a unifying force beneath the surface, a shared conviction that the Zarion Collective's aggression could not be tolerated. A week later, the Aetherian fleet arrived at the boundary between Aetherian and Zarion space. Synera herself was aboard the Ascendant, a flagship fitted with the most advanced defensive and offensive technologies the Aetherian Council could produce. She stood on the command deck, watching the vast array of ships around her. Beside her, Admiral Torin Kane, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for tactical brilliance, gave her a respectful nod. "Counselor Thal, the fleet is in formation. We await your command." Synera looked at the holographic projection of Zarion space, a vast expanse filled with uncharted nebulae, asteroid fields, and unknown dangers. Her jaw set, and she took a deep breath. "Admiral, send a final message to the Collective. Give them one last chance to stand down and negotiate. If they refuse," she paused, her eyes hardening, "we proceed with the assault." The message was sent, a direct communication to the Zarion leadership, giving them a final opportunity to avert the conflict. For a long, agonizing moment, there was no response, and the bridge crew watched the transmission channels in tense silence. Then a reply came through. The face of High Commander Varek, the Zarion leader, appeared on the screen, his expression cold and impassive. He spoke with a tone that dripped with contempt. "Aetheria believes it can dictate terms to the Collective? Your arrogance will be your undoing, Synera Thal. We do not yield, and we do not forget. The galaxy belongs to those with the strength to claim it." With that, the transmission ended, and the silence that followed felt heavy with inevitability. Synara's heart pounded, but her face remained composed. She looked to Admiral Kane and nodded. "Begin the assault." The Aetherian fleet surged forward, breaking through the boundary into Zarion territory. The first skirmishes erupted quickly, fighter jets weaving through fields of debris, and dreadnoughts unleashing torrents of energy beams that lit up the darkness of space. The Zarion forces were ready, their ships sleek and deadly, outfitted with weapons that pierced through Aetherian defenses with brutal efficiency. For hours the battle raged, both sides pushing the limits of their strength and strategy. Explosions rippled across the battlefield, illuminating the vast expanse with blinding flashes of light. Pilots shouted orders, engineers raced to repair failing systems, and medics worked tirelessly to save the wounded. On the command deck of the Ascendant, Synera watched the carnage unfold, her heart heavy with the weight of each life lost. As the battle wore on, Aetherian forces began to gain ground, pushing the Zarion fleet back. But victory was far from certain. The Zarion forces, with their unmatched aggression and unyielding resolve, were relentless. And just when it seemed that Aetheria might gain the upper hand, a new threat appeared. A colossal Zarion warship, larger than anything seen before, armed with experimental weapons capable of devastating entire fleets in a single strike. The sight of the massive warship sent a chill through the Aetherian forces. Synara's heart skipped a beat as she saw the ship appear on the holographic display, its energy readings off the charts. But she forced herself to remain calm. "Admiral Kane, prepare all units for a concentrated strike on that ship," she ordered, her voice steady. "We cannot let them break our line." And so, with every ounce of strength and strategy they could muster, the Aetherians launched their assault on the Zarion superweapon. The fate of the Aetherian Council, the lives of millions, and the future of peace in the galaxy rested on the outcome of this final, desperate clash. The battle in space raged like a storm, each side throwing everything it had into the fray. The Aetherian fleet was a disciplined force, each ship in perfect sync, firing in coordinated waves to maximize their impact. But the Zarion superweapon, the Oblivion's Edge, loomed as an insurmountable wall. It moved with a deadly grace, each of its weapons systems humming to life with a glow that sent chills through the Aetherian command deck. Synera could feel the tension thickening, but she knew that hesitation would only give the Zarions an advantage. "Fire all torpedoes on my command," she ordered, her voice steady but fierce. She turned to Admiral Kane, who was monitoring the Oblivion's Edge's position and weapons array. His jaw was clenched as he ran calculations, his fingers hovering over the console. They both knew that if they didn't disable the enemy's weapon systems soon, the Aetherian fleet would face devastating losses. At her command, a barrage of torpedoes launched from the Ascendant and the surrounding ships, streaking through space toward the Oblivion's Edge. The massive Zarion vessel activated its shield systems, deflecting most of the attack, but a few torpedoes managed to find their mark, leaving scorching impacts across the ship's hull. Yet the damage was minor, a mere scratch on the armor of the behemoth. Synara's face hardened as she realized that brute force alone would not be enough. "Admiral Kane, we need a new approach. How vulnerable is the Oblivion's Edge to infiltration?" Synara asked, her mind racing through possibilities. The Oblivion's Edge was too powerful to dismantle with firepower alone. They needed to strike at its heart. Kane hesitated, then spoke. "Our intel shows that the Zarion ship has a complex internal network. If we could send in a covert strike team to disable its core reactor from within, we could neutralize it, but getting a team aboard would be near impossible with their defenses up." Synara nodded, her expression resolute. "Prepare the infiltration team. I'll lead it myself." The bridge fell silent. The officers exchanged worried glances, but no one dared protest. Synara was not only their commander, she had been the voice that had led them into this war. To ask others to risk their lives while she stayed behind would betray the unity she had worked so hard to build. Within minutes, Synara and a small team of elite Aetherian soldiers boarded a stealth shuttle, their faces grim under their helmets. The plan was simple yet perilous. Bypass the Zarion defenses using a cloaking device, breach the Oblivion's Edge, and disable its core. Failure was not an option. The fate of Aetheria rested on their success. As the shuttle slipped through the chaos of the battlefield, weaving between ships and debris, Synara's heart pounded. She knew that if she failed, her people would pay the ultimate price. The journey to the Oblivion's Edge felt like an eternity, each second bringing them closer to either salvation or doom. Finally, they reached the superweapon's hull, deploying a magnetic clamp to secure the shuttle. With silent precision, they cut through the hull, entering the behemoth vessel's labyrinthine corridors. Inside, the atmosphere was oppressive, with dim red lighting casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sounds of distant machinery thrummed through the halls, an ominous reminder of the ship's deadly power. "Stay close and move quietly," Synara whispered, leading her team forward. They navigated the narrow corridors, avoiding patrols of Zarion soldiers who moved with the discipline and brutality that their reputation demanded. Every step felt like a gamble, but Synara's focus never wavered. She had to see this through. After what felt like hours of navigating the Oblivion's Edge, the team finally reached the core chamber, a massive room bathed in a pulsating blue light. In its center stood the reactor, a sprawling fusion engine surrounded by control consoles and reinforced barriers. 2 Zarion engineers monitored the core, but Synara's team swiftly took them down, securing the area. "Prepare the charges," Synara ordered. Her team moved quickly, attaching explosive devices to the reactor. But just as they set the final charge, an alarm blared throughout the chamber. Zarion reinforcements were on their way. "We've been compromised." Kane's voice crackled through the comms, relaying updates from the Ascendant. "Counselor Thal, you need to get out of there, now." But Synara knew there was no time to escape. The Zarion reinforcements were already closing in, and if she left, the charges wouldn't detonate in time to disable the reactor. Gritting her teeth, she made a decision that would etch her name in Aetherian history. "Admiral Kane, the charges are in place, but I'm staying behind to ensure they go off. When you see the explosion, pull the fleet back to a safe distance." "That's an order." "Synara, no." Kane's voice was choked with shock and desperation, but Synara had made up her mind. She closed her eyes, steeling herself. The Zarion soldiers burst into the room, weapons raised. Synara raised her own blaster, holding them off with a fierce determination that came from knowing this was the end. She activated the charges, and within seconds, the reactor erupted in a blinding flash of light. Back on the Ascendant, Admiral Kane watched in horrified silence as the Oblivion's Edge collapsed in on itself, consumed by a massive explosion that lit up the stars. The shockwave rippled through the surrounding space, forcing the Aetherian fleet to retreat to a safe distance. When the light faded, there was no trace of the Zarion superweapon or of Sonera Thal. She had given her life to end the threat, and in doing so, had secured a chance for Aetheria's survival. The news of her sacrifice spread quickly, reaching the farthest corners of the Aetherian worlds. Mourning ceremonies were held in every system, from the grand cities of Meridian Prime to the humble colonies on the edge of Aetherian space. Statues were erected in her honor, and her name became a symbol of bravery and sacrifice, a reminder that peace often came at a great cost. But Sonara's death had not been in vain. With the Oblivion's Edge destroyed, the Zarion collective's morale shattered. Their forces withdrew from the battlefield, and within weeks they sued for peace. A tentative truce was established, and though tensions would remain for years, the Aetherian Council had secured a fragile peace for their people. Admiral Kane, now promoted to High Counselor in Sonara's place, vowed to honor her legacy. He restructured the military, training future leaders in her image, instilling in them the values of courage, duty, and sacrifice. Under his leadership, the Council took steps to strengthen their alliances, ensuring that the galaxy would never again face the threat of unchecked tyranny. Years passed, and Sonara's story became legend, a tale told to children about the High Counselor who had faced the darkness to protect her people. Her memory lived on in the hearts of every Aetherian, a constant reminder of the price of freedom and the enduring strength of unity. And in the silent reaches of space, where the ruins of the Oblivion's Edge drifted through the cosmos, her spirit lingered, a guardian, watching over the stars she had given her life to protect.